It's an unfortunate outcome in the age of identity politics that some people think they're entitled to accolades or success because they were born a certain way. And if they belong to a particular identity group and that group is not represented in some endeavour according to their proportion of the population, then this is proof of some kind of bigotry. Unless, of course, representation is in favour of one of the so-called oppressed groups, then we just don't mention it. And if you think I'm exaggerating, this is an actual slide from a recent conference called the Washington STEM Summit. So if you think there might be a reason why less women take computer science at university that isn't associated with a broken sexist system, for example, the well-established finding that men and women make, on average, different choices with respect to certain educational vocations, then you're a bigot. And notice this is just asserted. There can only ever be one answer. Not exactly commensurate with the scientific ideal of free and open inquiry. And so to the latest episode of I'm Entitled to Shit Because Vagina. Golden Globes 2020. Most egregious snubs and surprises. Look, we don't always agree on everything, but some things are certainty. And we're certain Golden Globes voters are drunk. Although who constitutes we is somewhat of a mystery because the entire article is one person's subjective opinion on what movies, actors and directors should have been nominated for a Golden Globe. Anyone could have written this article. Just write down your favourite movies and performances for the year and bitch and whinge about how the Hollywood Foreign Press Association's choices didn't conform to yours. Let me give you a taste. But look across the board at all the main film categories in Best Drama, Best Comedy or Musical, Screenplay and Director. It's a testosterone fest. Not one of the nominated films in the two movie categories were directed by women. Not one of the director nominees is a woman, and not one of the screenplay nominees is a woman. This coming from an awards body that was actually trolled on stage by one of its own presenters, Natalie Portman, in 2018 for featuring an all-male director category.
And here are the all-male nominees.
Now imagine what it's like to think that Natalie Portman's stupid little statement at the previous year's Golden Globes constitutes an actual argument. Hey, an actress pointed out how there's no women in a particular category of film awards, therefore it's an important fact-based observation that should inform future nomination processes. No, Portman is just an idiot. She's imbibed the idea that people should be perfectly represented according to the demographic makeup of society, and of course, like all identitarians, I'm sure she applies that principle consistently, although strangely I've never heard her advocate for more male makeup artists or costume designers. Weird. Here's some more opinion masquerading as analysis. And yet here we are again, in a year where Greta Gerwig made one of the best, most finely tuned and affecting films, Little Women, in a year when Lulu Wang told the personal story of her grandmother's illness in The Farewell, sounds riveting, in a year when Marielle Heller made grown-ups cry in A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood. Instead, the Golden Globes, in all its wisdom, nominated Todd Phillips for Joker, a man who said you can't do comedy anymore in 2019, a man who thought using slow motion 37 times made his movie artful. Yeah, okay, so again I ask, dear Golden Globes, are you drunk? Now, I can't give you a judgment about all those films since I've only seen The Joker, and if you haven't seen it, I thoroughly recommend it. Joaquin Phoenix gives one of the best performances I've ever seen, especially given he had to follow Heath Ledger's excellent portrayal of the Joker in Dark Knight. I thought it was wonderfully directed, although I did have a bit of a problem with the ending. But again, imagine thinking you've made an actual argument against Todd Phillips being nominated. Firstly, Phillips didn't say you can't do comedy anymore. Here's what he was actually quoted as saying in Vanity Fair. Go try to be funny nowadays with this woke culture. There were articles written about why comedies don't work anymore. I'll tell you why. Because all the fucking funny guys are like, fuck this shit, because I don't want to offend you. It's hard to argue with 30 million people on Twitter. You just can't do it, right? So you just go, I'm out. I'm out, and you know what? With all my comedies, I think that what comedies in general all have in common is they're irreverent. So I go, how do I do something irreverent but fuck comedy? Oh, I know. Let's take the comic book universe and turn it on its head with this. And so that's really where that came from. So he's not saying you can't do comedy anymore. He's saying some people in the industry, like him, just don't want to put up with woke bullshit. Of course, he doesn't have to engage woke idiots on Twitter. Most people that come into contact with woke bullshit are repulsed by it. But he decided, fuck it, I'll try something else. And considering Joker has topped over $1 billion at the box office, I'd say he's done okay. And this quote about him using slow motion 37 times is linked to a movie review of the Joker by, surprise, surprise, the same author, in which she calls it a nihilistic, unrestrained jumble. She wrote this article on the day it was released to cinemas and finished with, Joker has been slammed for its potential to incite violence from similarly disenfranchised men who may feel entitled to fight back against a system they believe has deprived them of girlfriends. But that isn't Joker's only issue. If it were, Phillips may be right in feeling besieged by the negative coverage of the movie's problematic parts. So while it mostly scores on many technical levels, it could fail to connect with audiences. Art is meant to be challenging and provocative. Is it? But Joker steps too far over the line into nihilism, and that's not a fun time for anyone. Now, could she have been more wrong? Those fear-mongering about the film inciting violence have been oddly silent. And as mentioned, after $1 billion at the box office, I'd say it connected fairly well with audiences. The Joker is dark, no doubt about it, and has some nihilistic overtones, but there's plenty of fun to be had. Now, the best part of this whole female oppression narrative is that the president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, Lorenzo Soria, responded to the criticism of no female directors being nominated by saying the organisation votes based on film, not gender. What happened is that we don't vote by gender. We vote by film and accomplishment. Wow, what a novel idea, disregarding the gonads of the people making the films and focusing on the quality of the film. Who could have thunk it? Both of these articles are a perfect demonstration of why movie critics are mostly irrelevant, especially if they're ideologically predisposed to critique movies and awards based on identity. Thankfully, most sensible people aren't buying this pseudo-analysis. Read for yourself in the comments under the article and some of the tweets directed at the author, Wenlei Ma. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.